Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Funding to Fame, where we interview the founders and funders currently raising capital on FrontFundr, as well as experts in the private capital markets. I'm your host, Trieste Redding, the head of campaigns at FrontFundr, and I'm excited to introduce more Canadians to equity crowdfunding. This podcast episode features conversations about a business's current operations and future plans, and as a result may contain forward-looking information. There can be no assurance that forward-looking information will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. Listeners should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Today we are here with the founder and CEO of Fanbase, Isaac Hayes III. Fanbase is the first social economy platform where media, community, and commerce converge, empowering everyone to be a creator and earn from their content. Unlike traditional social networks, Fanbase puts creators at the center, giving them ownership, monetization capabilities, and freedom from algorithmic gatekeeping. Since launching, Fanbase has grown into a global creator-first platform with strong community ownership. Here are some highlights. Core monetization is live and driving value with subscriptions, tipping or love, and premium content tools empowering creator earnings. $21 million raised from over 28,000 investors to date, reflecting strong validation and community support. A culturally rooted, inclusively built platform designed for global growth. And investors own equity in the same platform they help grow, creating alignment between users and shareholders. Hi, Isaac. Thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to From Funding to Fame. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. Really excited to learn more about yourself and about Fanbase. So perhaps to kick things off, you can introduce yourself and walk us through a little bit about what your careers look like so far.
Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. I am an Atlanta native, been here my entire life since the age of 3. Spent about 20 years in the music business as a songwriter, producer, and then a little bit of time, probably the same amount of time as a voiceover artist. And around 2018, I got approached by a content creator that wanted me to manage him like I would manage an artist in the music industry. And I wasn't really interested, but I understood the moment that he was having. He went viral on social media for dancing in a Spider-Man costume. And so at that moment, this light bulb goes off in my head, says, he doesn't own Spider-Man, but he can dance. We need an app where people can subscribe to people the same way we subscribe to Netflix or Disney or Hulu or whatever the apps are at the time. And so I wanted to create something that didn't require people to sit in front of a camera like streamers do for 24 hours or hours, but be able to create content and then put that content behind paywalls. And that was the birth of Fanbase. It was a self-funded startup with my own money. Spent about $200,000 of my own money to fund the platform from about 2019 all the way till about the end of 2020. We first raised our first bit of capital outside of my self-funding the platform. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Wow, I appreciate that. It's great to hear more about your background kind of in that entertainment space and coming into content creation and managing that and overall to developing the idea for Fanbase. Maybe you could give us I know you've kind of given us that moment, that light bulb moment that came to founding it, but just maybe give us the quick elevator pitch for Fanbase.
So Fanbase is a free app. It's all the tools and social media platforms that we've been using and continue to use, combined with the ability to have subscribers, every individual, to put content behind a paywall separate from the free content that you post. And what I love about that is it's all the freedom and the creativity and fun that we find on traditional social apps like Instagram, like TikTok, like YouTube. But at the same time, we're moving into this era where creators are monetizing via subscription. So paywalling content, paywalling stories, lives, photos, videos, long form content, things like that. Audio rooms are now available, and that's what Fanbase combines both of those elements to do. And then also we have something called Love, because you like on Fanbase, which is a free interaction to show somebody that you like a post, and you can love a post. And then when you love a post, you tip the creator half a penny every time you love their content, and you yourself as a user buy that love and then give that love. So we call it showing love on Fanbase.
That's great. It's really a way of building a deeper connection between, content creators and their fans. So that's really, really nice to see. I know you mentioned kind of the earlier days of the startup being self-funded initially and things like that. How was it going about kind of finding your first users and first creators for the platform? What was that like?
I think, well, I always wanted the platform to speak for itself. I didn't want to try to talk about building an app, so I felt it necessary to build the MVP, the minimum viable product that people could actually touch and hold and use, and then let them decide for themselves that they want to actually use the product. Two things that I definitely did is I didn't even let anybody know I built the app. And I did that for a very specific reason, because I didn't want anybody that ever came along that might invest in the company from the VC side say, well, how did you get your users? And I have plenty of relationships over the last 20 years in the music industry. I didn't want to say that I got this artist, this producer, this actor, this entertainer, this celebrity to use the app, and that's how we got our users. I wanted to have a proof of concept that people would actually subscribe to other people. It sounds like it's very common now, but at the time in 2018, it was very, very foreign that you would think that someone would subscribe to another human being. But I put the app up. I didn't tell anybody that I built it for a year. And in that first year, we got about 10,000 users just organically using the platform, and people were getting subscriptions. And I think one user made maybe about $8,000 just off of about 10,000 users in that year. We tracked their subscriptions and other users and the money that they made. And so I said, okay, users will absolutely, subscribe to other people. And then I feel like I just didn't want people to see me as the founder. Typically, sometimes I feel like in spaces of African American people trying to found startups, you kind of want to just stay in the background. You don't necessarily want to be out front, for that could penalize you. So I wanted the app to speak for itself. And I feel like Fanbase always has and always will speak for itself better than I can. So I just wanted to put that distance between myself and the platform. But of course, COVID had other plans, and that changed the way and how we went about funding the platform.
No, I appreciate you sharing about those early days. And yeah, there's nothing more valuable than just really having the product or the platform speak on its own and be able to drive value for those different stakeholder groups you're trying to serve. So it's great to hear about that point in time. I know as well, Fanbase is, built on that principle of, everyone is a creator and deserves to earn. And you really enable creators to monetize their audience, maintain more control, and stand out in what can be a very crowded social media landscape. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more of just what sets you apart in terms of being able to drive that value for creators that other platforms are just not able to meet.
I think time and actually the model that most of these other platforms use. What I mean by time is that no social media platform is immortal. They're not going to exist and live forever. We've seen in the past few years, the ownership of Twitter change hands, the ownership of TikTok change hands. And so there's no amount of innovation that a social media platform can do to capture the youth, right? Because young people are always going to be on apps that their parents are not on. So regardless of how great a platform is, you're not going to have young people making Facebook pages. They're just not going to do it. Matter of fact, you're not going to have young people making Instagram pages primarily too much because their parents are there, their grandparents are there. And so time will always open the door for new social media platforms to exist where young people can be creative, feel free to express themselves, not have big brother or mom or dad or grandma there to look at what they're doing when they're just trying to have fun and live their lives. And then by model, most of the legacy platforms right now do content suppression and shadow banning intentionally. I know that's a word that people think is taboo, but I always ask people this question. Why would Instagram or TikTok let you reach 1 million people in your following when they're about to turn around and charge a company or a brand to reach 1 million people through advertising? If they did that, then the companies, the brands would come directly to the users on social media and run ads to their page. So if I was guaranteed to always reach 1 million people, 10 million people, 25 million people every time I posted a piece of content, why do I need to go run ads through Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. I just come to that user and say, hey, will you put this ad on your profile and I'll give you a check for that. These platforms know that. So for that very reason, they never let people with large followings reach all of their following consistently, because then that would damage their business model. There would be no business model of advertising for Meta or for TikTok if everybody could do that. And so Fanbase, we do not suppress content. The following that you have is the following that you reach. And then on top of recommendation engines and recommended content and posts, it even widens the ability for you to reach people. I'm not trying to stop you from reaching as many people as possible, because we aren't built off advertising. We are a rev share model platform, meaning we make money when you make money. So it's in our best interest to give you the widest audience possible so that the most people can see your content, so that small fraction of people that do want to subscribe to your content subscribe, because everybody's not going to subscribe to you. But I'd much rather be a platform that lets you reach 1 million people and let you have 50,000 subscribers. You know what I'm saying? Because then we benefit and everybody benefits, and then it becomes a snowball effect, and that is multiplied and magnified user over user, time and time again.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that context. It's so important, to have alignment there, and it's really interesting to hear, the contextualized revenue models of those other platforms and how it is inherently um, disadvantageous to them to allow those content creators to flourish and reach their full audiences, given that they drive revenue through other sources there. So really appreciate you sharing more of that there. And I know the global creator economy is just, it's huge. It's projected to grow from what, 250 billion today to 480 billion by 2027. With creator subscription platform market expected to reach 25.6 billion by 2033. So can you maybe share a little bit more insight into the market opportunity in which you see exists for Fanbase as a platform in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quiet part out loud that most of these social media platforms don't want to say is that the moment that video got added to social media, it turned everybody into a television network. You post content, you have an audience, you have viewers. Those viewers can scale to the thousands, to the millions, to the hundreds of millions. And so what you're realizing is that the democratization of the distribution of content is here. It is not going to be even primarily streaming platforms in the future. It's not going to be Netflix and Hulu, and it's not going to be even Disney Plus or these other, or even legacy television like DirecTV and Xfinity and all these platforms that distribute content. Those things are going away. I think people are going to consume the majority of their content through large social networks, right? That have the ability to have video and multi-use capability, because people are consuming content in ways that are a lot more, I guess, immersive than they used to be. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, by way of, I watch TV, but now I can watch TV and comment on what I see in a chat room with my friends. Or I can make a clip of this show and DM it to one of my friends. You know what I'm saying? I think the new TV guide of the world is your DMs, is your group chat. When you find a funny piece of content, you send that to your friends. When you find, a interesting story or something that you all want to collectively see on Fanbase, you can create a watch party, which is an audio room that allows you to post a YouTube video to the top and watch that content together. And so the market opportunity is to be part of a platform and have equity in a platform that turns every single person on the planet into a television network, not these 15 or 20 so streaming platforms that exist, but ownership in the entire global economy of the distribution of content, which I call and we call the social economy, where it's the convergence of social media, television, monetization, and community all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, I think that's such an important way to look at it. And just, yeah, the idea that video really does give that ability for everyone to become their own television network. I think that's a really great way of framing it there for sure. So appreciate you giving that context. For investors who are listening today, Isaac, can you maybe give us a bit of an outline of Fanbase's revenue model? I know you've touched on the fact that it's revenue sharing, which really changes the alignment with creators over traditional platforms. And I know you've got great features like subscriptions, tipping, or the love, which we touched on, premium content. Maybe you can walk us through just what are those key drivers in terms of how Fanbase makes money?
Yeah, so Fanbase makes money off of the percentage of the subscription that a user makes, either online or in-app purchase. So if it's an in-app purchase subscription right now, Fanbase gets about 35% of that revenue, 15 to the, uh, the platforms like Google Pay and Apple Pay, and then 50 to the creator, right? And then when you get on the web, it's a 50-50 rev share split. So 50 to the creator, 50 to fan base when we're bypassing the app stores. And that works the same way for the digital currency called Love. It's the same split in the same way. It's a 50-50 split or a 35-15 store and 50 to the user.
Okay, that's great. And I know traction for the company has definitely been building and growing quite a bit. I think its total installs were up 68% year over year, new users 95%, and the engagement really continues to rise with the platform. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about just the incredible traction that you've seen to date, as well as, what's that next stage of growth for Fanbase? What do those plans look like?
Yeah, so we have over 1.4 million users on the platform. We saw a large spike when TikTok went down briefly at the beginning of the year, but it also gave us insight into the potentiality that the platform itself might go away or change in some way that we thought, just based on the politics of what's going on. And we've actually seen that happen with now this transaction, this sale of TikTok to the United States of America. Now, what that means for the current users of TikTok, we don't know, but I don't think they'll keep, all 180 million users that exist on the platform.
Yeah.
And the market opportunity us for there is just to be able to continue to build on the growth that we have by building tools, the best tools for creators to monetize, but also focusing a lot more on community. I don't think that celebrities make apps. I think communities do. And creating an environment where people can actually build community with the right set of tools, the right set of products, is important. Which is why this raise, really, even this raise that we're doing right now, is very, very important, because when you're building a company like this, we have an amazing development team, but you want to be able to get the best talent available. You really want to be able to hire people that used to work at TikTok or used to work at Instagram, right? And those individuals aren't cheap. They've earned the right to receive the salaries they receive, but we've also got to have, that type of personnel and involved. And then also we have to be able to expand our tech stack and get some independence from some of the things that we relied on in the past just to actually have the platform function. One of those things that we just did is we refactored our entire notifications environment. So now it's scalable and can grow a lot farther and handle a lot more users on the platform. And then we're actually about to launch our recommendation engine, our algorithm, a new version of that requires some data scientists and people to train the algorithm and all these other things. And so those are the next phases of growth for Fanbase that are really, really important. Probably the three biggest things that I would say is the algorithm itself, also a redesign and a rebuild of what we call Flicks, which is our version of short form video like TikTok, from the ground up, to really give users the ability to actually have a lot more control over the creative tools that they use on these platforms. And then again, the community environment of adding more functionality to things like DMs and more functionality to audio and really fun tools that we have, because I'm just focused so much more on community. I think social media in the last few years has turned into more of a tool and not so much fun. And I mean, social media platforms are fun. Regardless of the agenda of all these oligarchs of what they want to do with the platform, I think they're great spaces and great opportunities for people to build community and have fun. And that needs to be the core of why we build a product, as a way to bring people together all around the planet.
Yeah, it's so important. I think as you hit on, really, community should be at the forefront. It should be a uniting thing. I think with a lot of those bigger social media platforms now, it's just how can they keep people time spent on platform, but they're doing so in ways that are more trying to get people angry at certain behaviors or other things rather than truly creating just an enjoyable experience, which I think is what we're all looking for through these platforms. So it's really nice to hear. And I know you touched on there briefly just the importance of community and how that translates to the raise. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit as well. You guys have historically done quite a bit of funding through equity crowdfunding, and now we're fortunate to be bringing that to Canada with FrontFundr here. But I would love to hear just about your experience raising capital from the crowd, what that's been like. I know we often like to call it community capital for that reason. You are, raising from your community and building community. So yeah, I would love to hear just what that's been like as an experience for your company, knowing how much you've raised through equity crowdfunding thus far.
Well, I think it is the biggest gift in the world for us as a company because oftentimes, almost almost exclusively, these social media platforms are built and funded by VCs, right? And it's a small group of people. It might be 15, 20, 30 people, but it's the same people over and over again that wind up being like worth hundreds of billions of dollars, like tens of billions of dollars that do this. And so in my mind, um, coming from the music business, I had to find a transferable skill set or understand the landscape of what I thought tech would be in coming to this side of the game. And I realized that it's very similar to the music business when it comes to funding your business. And what I mean by that is I would look at a VC as like a record company, and I would look at an app, right? Like an artist. And I would look at the App Store charts, like the Billboard charts. And so by raising this money independently, it's like Fanbase is an independent app. We haven't taken money from the big VCs that usually want a lot more equity, a lot more control, and can actually put the founders in position to do things that they might not necessarily want to do at the time. And so that whole process has been really, really cool because now we're giving a shot at the people that actually make the platform successful, which are the users. If every user left TikTok or Instagram, you know what I'm saying, or X or whatever it is, these platforms will be worth $0 and 0 cents. So providing the opportunity for users to actually own a piece of the platform itself and then help it scale, but not in the way that I feel like people just might want to see a small or minimal return. I would not have raised capital this way if I didn't think that fan base could be something that got to tens or hundreds of billions of dollars, just based on the fact of what other companies are valued at. When you think of Facebook or Meta is worth $1.9 trillion. When you think of Instagram, if they would have never sold to Meta, it would be a $500 billion company. When you think of ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent company, being worth $400 billion. And all those platforms are powered by users and people. So who better than to give an opportunity to invest in the platform than the people that actually make it popular? And so through the 4 rounds of equity crowdfunding that we've done on Start Engine, we've been able to raise, $23 million, over $23 million from about 24,000 investors. And so we wanted to open this up in Canada because in this entire time that we've been raising, we've always had the Canadian community saying, can we invest? Can we invest? And I've always had to give the bad news. I'm like, SEC won't allow us to do that. And so FrontFundr just was a blessing and really something that I thought is amazing because now I get to connect with the Canadian community and give them an opportunity to own because Canada, for us, is probably one of our larger user bases on the platform. So the fact that the users in Canada can have ownership just like the users in America, I think is important. So I'm really excited about being able to offer equity to the users in Canada.
No, that's really, really great, and I love the way that you frame that there. I think as with kind of your platform's revenue model being very value aligned with the creators, I think this funding model just really is value aligned with all the users and creators as well, really bringing that community on board with you. So it's great to see that you guys have pursued that path and you've had such success with it thus far. And we're very excited for you to now be bringing this to Canada and opening it up to our market as well. And I know you touched a little bit on the raise with FrontFundr, and we've talked through some objectives as well. But maybe as a quick summary for those listening, you could just give us a little bit of an indication on kind of the use of funds for this round and what those key objectives are going to be with the funding moving forward.
Yeah. So again, a lot of times, so in building in Fanbase in the beginning, and a lot of apps do this, is they use other elements of not original, like always original coding. Because to build something this massive, if I were to build this entire thing from the development standpoint of all the systems being independent, it would take hundreds of millions of dollars to build. So to be able to get Fanbase and scale the platform, there are platforms and things that we use to initially get us to the point to validate the process that this app can be built and be successful. Now we're at a point right now where it's not like startup mode, it's scale up mode, right? And so to scale up, we have to have independent tech stacks that we own ourselves. So we build that tech from the beginning. And a lot of that is already in place, but even again, our own algorithm that is a standalone product. It is not something that is going to exist inside Fanbase. It's going to exist outside Fanbase, but be used by Fanbase, but it's our product. It gives us the ability to scale that. We're working on also, like I said, again, rebuilding Flix, which is our short form video model from the ground up, because the users require a little bit more creative input and flexibility in the way that they make content, adding music to posts and effects and all these other things, and really using that region-based editing that kind of came to the forefront maybe in the last 4 or 5 years. People understand if anybody's ever used, I don't know, a platform like iMovie before, if you're in the music business, you ever use Pro Tools, or you've ever used Logic or Reason, where you're moving regions around, and that's kind of how editing is done in the video perspective. And then we want to simplify the platform by the way that you create content. We want it to be super, super seamless. And so that requires a restructuring, a content simplification, so that it's the flow of getting into creating content of the 6 formats that we have. And I don't think I actually got to say that Fanbase has 6 formats of content that you can create in, which are posts, which everybody knows are just photos and videos,
Yep.
Short form video, which is like TikTok, long form video, which is like YouTube, live streaming, vertical live streaming, stories, and then audio rooms, which are like X Spaces and Clubhouse. And those are monetized via tipping and subscription if you want to as well. So putting all that together requires a lot of work and a lot of capital, but I want our independence, because then we're able to scale and build in the way that we want to build. Ironically enough, me and my CTO were talking yesterday about how AWS went down, and that affected
Yes.
a lot of people. And so we might even want to think about having our own independent cloud storage. So something like that isn't really affected when AWS goes down. Everybody goes down. And so to build those things, you need capital to separate yourself and insulate yourself from sometimes these blackouts or hiccups that happen that affect all these companies. And so that's a great use of funds that we're using Fanbase for to move forward. And then our objective is to get to a MAU of over 1 million users by the end of 2026. So user base and MAU is really a different perspective, because you want 1 million consistent users. That opens the idea and the opportunity for us to consider advertising, but in a way that doesn't affect the users the way that it does on Instagram and TikTok. Not where I have to limit your visibility to run advertising, but for you to be able to have advertising opportunities via the content that you create, but we're not suppressing your content. But to really get there, we need to at least get to 1 million MAU to really scale that up. And so that's what the use of this funds are, really to prepare us and scale us up to have 1 million MAU by the end of 2026.
That's incredible. And for those who are listening who may not be too familiar with the acronym MAU, monthly active users, right? So like you said, it's rather than just a user base, it's you want to ensure people are engaged and actively using the platform day in and day out. And that's why it can be such an important metric for businesses there. So really appreciate you walking us through that, as well as those key growth drivers for the company. I think as you noted earlier, it's so important as you're in scale up mode and building, that you have the right people on board and brilliant minds to make it all happen. So it's great to hear more about that. I would also love to touch on a little bit more about yourself yourself as, founder and CEO, building a company is no easy feat. Scaling a company is no easy feat. So with your past experience and what you've kind of accomplished so far, would love to hear a little bit more about your leadership philosophy and how you go about inspiring the team. Obviously, leadership is pivotal to any company, so would love to hear kind of what drives you with that.
Well, yeah, I think, I don't feel like, number one, I don't call our team members employees, right? I think we work together. We don't, nobody works for me. We all work together at the company. And I think that's very, very important because every voice and every perspective and every idea is important to the growth of the company. You got to have people around you that know more than you in specific areas, all over the place, where it comes to development or marketing, all these places that exist, so that they see around corners that you don't. And so I consider myself a visionary, and to do that, you need integrators that can implement your vision. And a lot of times, those people have to be smarter than you are. I know what I want Fanbase to feel like. I know what I want Fanbase to look like. I know what I want Fanbase to sound like. I know what I want it to function, right? And when you get down to the minutia, you have to trust the people that you bring in and hire very, very smart people around you to do that, and then give them the freedom to solve the biggest problems that you have, right? They should be solving the biggest problems in a way that benefit the platform the most. And so having a lot of great problem solvers, and then giving people the idea and the freedom to be creative. Because what I love to do at the company is have an idea for a vision or a product that I want to do, and then give it to the development team, and then let them say, this is how we see that this will work. And a lot of times, 99% of the time, they're always doing something or adding something to what we're doing that I didn't think of, which actually elevates the product and actually makes it better, and things that I didn't think about, which are amazingly cool. And so you've got to give your team the ability to do stuff like that. I think, you can have a top-down approach or a bottoms-up approach. And I think bottoms-up is more important. Let the people that are closest to the work make those decisions, and you have to trust those people to make those decisions. Without it, if I'm always over top of everybody, I'm actually doing myself a disservice as being the CEO of the company, trying to do everybody's job for them, as opposed to making sure that I put people in position and put our team members in position to be able to accomplish those tasks that give the result that's satisfactory to me, but more importantly, the best output and the best eventual outcome for the platform.
No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing more of your philosophy there. I think, in particular, when you're a growing company, when you're a company that's scaling, ensuring that you're hiring the right people and giving them the tools to do what they need is so important because things move so quickly. You need people who are willing to problem solve, who are resilient and can just dive in situations like that, where if you have too much of a top-down approach, it can really be tough to grow in the ways that you need to capitalize on the growing market opportunity there. So I think that's a great philosophy and one that certainly makes sense for the type of company that Fanbase is for sure. Now, one thing I always like to ask, leaders on any team is just across your journey so far with the company, has there perhaps been a favorite moment that stands out to you, or maybe a moment where you start to notice like a significant shift in the business in a positive direction? Just something that really stands out to you from your past journey with the company thus far.
Man, we've had quite a few of those, only because I think from people understanding where social media was at the time when I found the fan base to where it is now, it's a lot more creator friendly. And I love the influence that we've been able to have on major platforms that give us confidence. And what I mean by that is, I want to be clear when I say this. Before 2018, in Fanbase, there was not a social media platform in existence. And what I mean by that is it did not exist on Facebook. It did not exist on Instagram. It didn't exist on Snapchat or Twitter or TikTok, where a person could subscribe to an individual person using in-app purchase capability. We came up with that. We I remember my CTO vividly telling me, if Apple allows us to do what we're trying to do, you're about to do something that no one has ever done. Because as I surveyed the marketplace, the only other platforms that exist that allow subscription involved a credit card, right? So if you're thinking about a Patreon or an OnlyFans or even a YouTube at the time, you're subscribing via credit cards, right? But the frictionless ability to subscribe with in-app purchase capability, that changes the game because it allows that process to take place a lot faster. And so that's one of the best moments ever. Even when we found out that Instagram was doing subscriptions from our Apple rep in a way that we were not allowed to initially do it, I was like, wow, Apple even changed their business model and Google changed their business model by allowing SKUs and price points and variable pricing for all types of subscriptions, which did not exist before. And so in the way that it does with social media, so I think that's one of the prouder moments that we've actually had at the company is that we actually did something that no one ever did. And that gives me confidence because it lets me know that the people with all the money are not the people with the best ideas. Understand that most of these platforms are built and they're used kind of as testing grounds or their focus groups by the users. And then what the users do is what the apps wind up doing. And so I always looked at myself as a person that was a user of social media before someone that built a company. And so the ideas and the roadblock that I would naturally come into contact with in the platform, I love to be able to express those ideas. And even when those ideas get adopted by other platforms, I don't get upset because I already know that I got a million more of these ideas and we'll just keep ideating and doing that because most of the great ideas don't come from the platforms themselves. They usually try to acquire the companies with the best ideas. So I already know that that buried within our company, buried within our user base are the better ideas, not what already exists at the top. And so being able to come to market and create things like content migration, which is like the ability to take all of your content that's on TikTok and import it over to Fanbase, right? Or all your content that's on Instagram and import it over to Fanbase. That didn't exist. And so that's something that we came up with. And now I've seen other platforms try to mimic that model because it's your content. If you want to leave and go to a new platform, you should be able to pack up all your content, ship it on over, which we allow people to do on Fanbase. And so those moments where I see that we're having an influence on the way that these platforms that are worth hundreds of billions of dollars are paying attention to what we're doing, that gives me all the confidence in the world.
No, that's really incredible to hear. I appreciate you sharing those stories there. I think, yeah, when you look at the larger platforms, their ability to innovate is definitely, I think, a little slower than it once was, right? Given their size, and I think as well, they're probably not as incentivized to listen to the users because, as you mentioned earlier, that's not really driving their revenue for them. It's the advertisers, it's the corporations, and so that can hurt the experience of, the users on the platform. Whereas for you guys, you're really focused and believe in driving value for users and creators. And yeah, to say that you were the first to drive some innovative tools and bring that to the market and be leading the disruption there is really incredible. So yeah, congratulations on that to you guys. That's fantastic to hear. Now, I always like to chat with business leaders as well. Just being a founder, CEO, entrepreneur is an incredibly busy job. So when you're not working, what is it that you love to do to unwind and relax?
Um, Honestly, this is going to sound strange, but I probably work 7 days a week. I really do because the the blessing and the opportunity to be able to build something that is your dream, it's not like a job to me. I get to really, I'm always thinking about ways to make the platform better. But occasionally, I like to play Call of Duty to unwind. I call it Call of Duty season starts in the fall when usually the new game comes out, and I get to play with my friends. So probably from November to January, over the holidays, we get to have a little fun and play some video games. Other than that, though, my mind is always on the app, right? And because
Yeah.
apps don't sleep, this is one of those jobs where it's like, oh, it's not like at 5:30, the users go home. They're always on the app. And so there's always something that I'm thinking about or thinking about down the road because you gotta be thinking, you gotta live in the now, but you also gotta be thinking about, 6 months ahead, 5 years ahead, where do you see the platform going? Because there's opportunities there that most of these platforms are so large that they're not seeing. And so you want to ideate on that. I definitely get my opportunity to rest because, again, I can take breaks. I don't necessarily always have to wake up at 6 in the morning all the time. I can get up at maybe 8 or 9 and get to the office a little bit later than I normally would. So I take breaks as needed, but my focus is always 100% on fan base at all times.
Oh, makes sense. That's one of the aspects of life of an entrepreneur, right? You're never really offline. You're always working, and so I can imagine the 7 day schedule. But to your point, when you're doing what you love, it really doesn't feel like work. And I think in this case, you're definitely disrupting a market and creating a lot of change, and that's always just such an exciting feeling. So I'm sure that keeps the motivation high there for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, I always like to ask founders as well. Obviously, you've got a lot of great experience under your belt, building, launching, growing a platform. Is there maybe a quote or a piece of advice that you've received along your entrepreneurial journey that's guided you thus far?
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given is always is from one of my mentors who told me to always just build the best product possible. If you
Hmm.
focus on the product, right, everything else falls into place. A lot of times people might say, well, you need this celebrity to use the platform, or what about the marketing strategy on getting users to adopt the platform? But I always look at things like food or music or cologne. It's like it sells itself regardless if it's just that good, right? So you don't need if there's a great, you know, food product, people will stand in line in the rain to order it out of a food truck. It doesn't need to be a fancy restaurant. It doesn't need to have the best packaging. It's all about the product, right? A great cologne when you smell it. It hits you instantaneously, and it works without people asking. It's the same thing for music. When you hear a hit song, it's not about all the marketing in the world, or if everybody could buy streams, they would. But the records that have a connection and connect immediately are the ones that can use marketing. But at the end of the day, the record is selling itself. And so focusing on building the best product for creators and the social economy worldwide is the North Star for us, right? That keeps us focused, right? It's a vision and an idea. And that's probably the best advice that I've gotten is saying, look, focus on the product. Everything else will fall into place. The celebrities, the users, the marketing strategy. If you build the product that people really, really want, they'll value it over other places that they are right now. And then those opportunities to capitalize on a phenomenal marketing strategy or inquiring about getting creators involved. Because without that, those people come and go. I always say celebrities got a
Yeah.
celebrity. They can't sit on apps all day long. They gotta go work. And so I can't rely on a famous person to draw people into my platform and then make them stay once they're not there. The product has to do that. The community has to do that. And so that's what we focus on.
That's so important, and it's a great piece of advice. I think as you touched on there, like as a company, you can run user acquisition campaigns, marketing strategies, get people to the platform, but if it's not a good product, they're not going to stick around, and that's what's important there. So building a great product is key, and yeah, I think that's great advice for those listening today. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, last question as we look to wrap things up. Always love to close things on a final note for investors. So, for those investors who are listening today, if you could leave them with three things to take away about Fanbase, what would they be?
Um, Fan base is not compromised, right? There is no agenda to create a platform to manipulate the world with propaganda, which I feel like a lot of these apps are. I
Yeah.
think they should be platforms where freedom of speech is honored, the right to be yourself. That is one of our biggest taglines and our biggest, mission statements is Fanbase is a place that allows you to be you without limits. I think that our intention is creator focused first because without creators making money, we have to make money. And so that always keeps us in a form of considering the best outcome for the users of the platform to do so. And then just look at the world the way that it's changing. You see the kind of the erosion of legacy media. Big broadcast networks can barely pull in the same amount of viewers that social media platforms can. And so that is where the puck is going. All of this is shifting down towards social networks that distribute content. So even in the future, as much as you're watching short form video and YouTube style videos, don't be surprised in the future if you are watching major networks distribute their content through large social networks like Fanbase. So rather than going to Netflix, you log into Netflix through Fanbase and you watch that content. You watch, HBO Max, you watch Hulu, you watch Disney, you watch sports, and then you have the tools of the platform to do a lot of other things, to be able to pin that to a room and have a conversation about it, to clip it, to share it, to stream it, to remix it, and interact with it. And so understand that is where the platform is going. And also, one of the things that I've noticed a lot of, and my belief is that I feel like these large tech companies are over-indexing on AI as the means of creation, not as the means of being able to use it as a tool. But I don't want Fanbase to be a platform that just has all AI generated content. That people want real life. People want to see what really happens. So if we're in a world we can just render whatever we want in our heads, then that takes the fun out of what life is about, the unpredictability, the things that we don't know that happens. The fact that, oh, this person really did, like this animal really did accomplish that feat, or this person really did do that dance, but not render it, because that's not what real life is about, is manufacturing the impossible. Real life is about witnessing the impossible, and social media gives us the opportunity to capture that and share that. And so I think investors should know that, Fanbase wants to be a platform that's grounded in the truth, freedom of speech, reality, and putting the creators first, and understanding that where the world is heading by way of content distribution, the atomization of content down to individual users as places where we consume our content. But without it being in a community, it can't scale. So as much as I love the platforms that allow you to have subscribers and allow you to do that, if it can't scale to hundreds of millions of users that just happen to use the platform, despite even wanting to be entertained by the content that's there, it won't work. And so that's the best of what Fanbase does. It has the freedom and the scalability of a community social media platform, but the aspect of optimal monetization for people that want to consume content via subscription. And so that's why I leave to the investors, and that you yourself will actually have an opportunity to own part of a tech company, and also in a way that you yourself, as the investor, have the ability to increase the value and asset you own. I don't know any other platforms or any other ways a lot of times that people can do that by investing in something. Again, a lot of times when we invest in these products, we can invest in food products, we can invest in jet engines and all these other things, but there's no way that directly affects the value of a platform more than social media, because the users add the value. So the more users on the platform, by simply using the platform, the value increases. And so I would much rather be using the platform as a user and as an investor than just a user, and understanding that I have the power to tell more people and bring more people along and help us scale to the next level, which is where we're going. So for sure.
Well, I think that's a great note to finish our conversation on. I know I really learned a lot about Fanbase, about yourself, about the creator economy, and I think the future of social media is very bright with companies like yours at the forefront innovating. And so for those listening today, if you're looking to learn more about Fanbase, you can do so at their campaign page, frontfundr.com/fanbase. There's actually a nice video there with Isaac in it on the campaign page as well as some great perks and other information. So do encourage you to check that out. And Isaac, it's been fantastic speaking with you today. Really appreciate you sharing more about your journey, more about Fanbase. And I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation for listeners.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
For anyone new to the podcast, FrontFundr is Canada's leading equity crowdfunding platform, enabling all Canadians to invest in the most exciting startups and growth stage companies, something that was previously only available to the 1%. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can have your questions answered in an upcoming episode. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and should not constitute financial advice. Investors should conduct their own due diligence on any investment they may be considering on FrontFundr. For details of any offering listed on FrontFundr, refer to the offering document on their campaign page at www.frontfundr.com.